Okay, so welcome to the Chai Academy and our Sunday morning Torah study, where we focus on the Torah portion of the week that we read yesterday. It's actually a fascinating portion because there's a lot happens and there's a lot of lessons to be learned. So the Torah tells us, the Torah portion is called Shemini, 8th. And the Torah begins, it was on the 8th day of inauguration. It was the 8th day of inauguration, and and Moshe called Aaron and he said, okay, it's time for you to take over. Basically, the way it worked is on the first 7 days of inaugurating the holy temple in the desert, which was called the sanctuary, the portable sanctuary. Moses did the first 7 days. And on the 8th day, Aaron, the high priest, became the high priest, and he took over from Moses. And the reason why Moses did the first 7 days is because it was supposed to be Moses's job. Moses was going to be not only the leader of the Jewish people, Moses was also going to be the high priest, the Kohen Gadol. But it was stripped from him and it was given to his brother because Moses, when he met God at the burning bush, Moses was reluctant and Moses dodged and weaved. He didn't want to go to Egypt. First of all, he felt it was an attempt in futility. Pharaoh's never going to let millions of people go. Secondly, is Moses didn't know what's the purpose? So you let them out and they're free people, but what have you really done? And God kept on trying to convince him. And finally, after a week of this, on the 8th day, God tells Moses, okay, you have to go. I'm not asking you anymore. But as far as you're concerned that you have a lisp or a speech impediment, not quite sure what that was, and you have, you feel you're not articulate enough to speak to the king of Egypt, the ruler of the time, I'm going to send Aaron with you. And now because Aaron on the 8th day finally was brought into the picture to go to Pharaoh with Moshe, Aaron was rewarded. So Aaron then was rewarded with the high priest. God took Moses' position, split in half. You're the leader. You're in essence the king, because Moses, the legal title Moses had, even though he wasn't called by that title, but the legal title Moses had was king. And you, Aaron, you're going to be the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. So Moses did it for 7 days. On the 8th day, Aaron finally was brought in, and Aaron was the high priest. Now, the 8th day was not only because of the conversation that took place with Moses and the burning bush. 8th day, we're taught, is also a very special day. And the way it works, in Kabbalah, it talks about the 8th day as something that's supranatural. The world was created in 7 days. 7 days is the order of creation. The 8th day transcends creation. So the 8th day can be viewed as the first day of the second week in the order of creation, or the 8th day can be viewed as something that's loftier than creation. It is for this reason a baby has a bris on the 8th day, not the 7th day, on the 8th day. Because a bris is something that's supra-rational. It's higher than our understanding. There's one thing if you make a covenant with somebody, and that somebody has the capacity to understand and agree to the covenant. But this bris, and bris means, by the way, covenant. This bris is done with the baby. Baby has no say. The baby has no input. The baby doesn't know what's going on. But we do it on the 8th day to show that this is something that's super rational. This is something that's not the normal order of things. The baby may not intellectually understand. The baby may not be able to agree or disagree, but the baby there's a bond. There's this bond, the spiritual bond that the baby has that's higher than the nature, that's higher than the natural order of things. A baby also has to live over Shabbat. So you have to have one Shabbat. Anyway, the 8th day is considered grand. The 8th day is considered something very special. The 8th day, Aaron took over. On the 8th day, it's super rational. It's higher than the natural order. And the 8th day is when Aaron took over. So Aaron took over. And the Torah tells us that Moshe said to Aaron, Krav, come on, get closer to the altar. And Aaron was reluctant to do so. Aaron was fearful. The commentaries say that Aaron was fearful for a couple of reasons. First, he felt maybe he wasn't worthy. He was taking it away from Moshe. Another thought is that Aaron was worried that because he took part in the golden calf, albeit unwillingly, albeit he wanted to stall the golden calf until they got all their gold so Moses would come down, he was still involved. And therefore he was reluctant. Moshe told him, don't be reluctant. I got punished for being reluctant. Do not be reluctant now, Moshe told Aaron. Do not. If you're reluctant now, you stand the possibility of losing your position. And therefore, step up to the plate. And Moshe and Aaron on the 8th day, they both walked into the holies and they did the transfer of power and they did what they were supposed to. And the Torah tells us that the cloud of glory appeared and the glory of God appeared to all the people. So that was to show that God accepted these offerings, accepted this sanctuary, etc. And Aaron blessed the Jewish people. He lifted his hands. And even today, a Kohen, when he blesses the Jewish people on the holidays, in Israel, it's actually done every day. The Kohen steps up in the repetition of the Amidah and he blesses. It's done very quickly during the week. On Shabbat, it's a little longer, but we kind of what we do on holidays. But in diaspora, anytime outside of Israel, it is done only on the holidays, and we sing it. There in Israel, they sing it on Shabbat, and they sing it on the holidays, and they just say it on every weekday. Here, we reserve it for special days. And Aaron lifted his hands, and he blessed the Jewish people. May the Lord bless you and guard you. May the Lord turn his countenance towards you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift your countenance and grant you peace. So that was the blessing. And then it was an additional blessing. May the divine presence, may the divine presence always rest among the work of your hands. And that was the blessing that they gave. And when the Kohen blesses, he stretches forth his hands, and one hand touches the other, and he blesses. And this was given specifically to the Kohen, not to Moshe, specifically to the Kohen. And even today, a Kohen, which can ultimately trace their lineage to Aaron, has the special extra power to bless, and they do. Not everybody with the last name Cohen is necessarily a Kohen. Many of them are. Many Kaplans are. Many Saxes are, for that matter. But not everybody. In order for a person to be a Kohen, not just in last name, but a Kohen, one's father had to be a Kohen. One's grandfather patrilineally has to be a Kohen, and there has to be no bad marriages and in unethical marriages. So, an example: if a man married a woman and this woman got divorced from her husband, and then she marries a Kohen, that severs the children's ties of being Kohanim. A Kohen, even today, is not allowed to marry a divorcee. It's a biblical command. A Kohen today is allowed to marry a widow, but is not allowed to marry a divorcee. And if he does, then he loses his Kohen status as long as he's married to her. And if he has any children with her, they are considered halalim. Halalim means that they are, it's profane. They're not Kohanim. And their children are not Kohanim. And in fact, a rabbi who officiates at weddings, if there's a Kohen involved, the Kohen is not, the rabbi is not allowed to officiate unless it is the Kohen is marrying a widow or is marrying a woman that's never been married before. There are other rules, but this is beyond the pale. So just because you're a Kohen doesn't necessarily make you a Kohen, because if you messed up, you messed up. And if your parents messed up, there's nothing really you can do. If your father or grandfather married a divorcee and had you or had a grandchild, you're not a Kohen. And you're not a Kohen for life. That means you don't get called up as a Kohen. That means you do not do the priestly blessing, etc. And it's interesting is that in the times of the temple, if a Kohen married a divorcee, or if the Kohen married, even now, but in the times of the temple, if a Kohen married a woman that had slept with a Gentile, the Kohen's not allowed to marry that woman. It's all biblical. It's not, don't shoot the messenger. And in the times of the temple, if a Kohen did marry a woman he was not supposed to, they used to drag him to the court, and they used to say, divorce her. And if he says no, he used to get beaten, lashes, and divorce her. And if he said no, they brought him the next day, or whenever he healed from the lashes. They didn't want to kill him, and they used to beat him again. And eventually, he was beaten into submission. Nowadays, we don't have that mechanism, nor should we. But a Kohen is not a Kohen. He loses the status as a Kohen. So going back to the text, God accepted the sacrifice of Aaron, and God's presence rested on the portable sanctuary, and it was a tremendous day of joy. It was a tremendous day of connection. This is the first day for hundreds of years. I mean, the sanctuary in the desert, which eventually went into Jerusalem, was for hundreds of years. Then the first temple was for hundreds of years. The second temple was for 420 years, etc. One was for 10, one was for 20. And so for over 1,000 years, they had this connection until it was destroyed. Right? And now we're bereft of a holy temple, but we have a temple. Our temple is our body. Our temple is our homes. Our temple is the synagogue. Right? We have to make sure that our body is fit for God to live in. So in other words, we try and do the best we can and be as honorable as we can. Our homes should be the best possible home we can. Right? There shouldn't be any blatant. Right? We should try, as if Jew or not Jew, we should try and make our homes holy by doing the right thing, by honoring God in our homes, and likewise in the temple. We have a temple, but it's not just the temple, and many Jews make that mistake. When they walk into temple, they put on a yarmulke, and they walk out of temple, they take off a yarmulke. Doesn't make sense because it's the same body, but it's a level. who's, it's, I guess it does make sense in some level. So I take that back. Um, I believe, I firmly believe when somebody keeps kosher in the home and they do not keep kosher outside the home, I believe that is a level. I believe that they're trying their best. And it's not that, oh, it's the same body, So I take that back. But it's the idea is, though, that you should try and be holy at all times, from your body to your house to your synagogue. On that very same day, on that same day that the Jews, the Hebrews, united with God and they had a temple, two sons of Aaron did the unthinkable. They took a frying pan, they took incense, they took fire, and they lit the incense, and this is something that they do every day in the holy temple, but by Aaron, or once a day or twice a day, but it has to be designated times, and it has to be a certain incense, and it has to be a certain fire. And they walked into the holies of holies, and they were immediately killed on that same day. They were immediately killed. A fire came from heaven, and it did not destroy their body, it destroyed their insides. And outwardly, their body was intact, and they died. Aaron had 4 sons, 2 of them died. Moshe turned to Aaron, and he said to Aaron, I always knew that we, you and I, were holy, but we never reached our pinnacle. And now I know that your 2 sons reached their pinnacle, and they are holier than us. And by Yidom Aaron was quiet. Aaron did not yell, did not scream, he did not curse God. He just lost 2 sons. 2, right? He lost 50% of his progeny. And the Torah tells us Vayidom, he was quiet. And Moshe actually praised them. And the commentaries explain that the 2 sons of Aaron were extremely, extremely holy. They wanted to get as close to God as they could get. They wanted to mesh with God and be in the holies of holies and be one with God. It was the wrong thing to do, but their objective was to connect with God, and even if it means being rid of their physical body. And they died. They actually got what they wanted. They got what they wanted. They died. They were taken, and by the way, the show went on. Aaron still was offering sacrifices, and Aaron was still, he didn't change because it was an awesome day. And even though he lost 2 sons, which normally Cohen would not allow to, generally speaking, not allowed to serve in the temple when you're a mourner, but here the show went on. And they explain as follows. The Kabbalah explains as follows, that it's our job as a human being, as a Homo sapien, to get as close to God as we can, right? To have rapturous love, to try and connect and to bond, but always be mindful that we are still in a physical body. So to fast, because if you fast, as we do in Yom Kippur, it takes away your physicality, your corporeality. You're not so focused. You're not eating General Chow, and you're not eating a toast and cheese or a pizza. You're removed from that, right? So it's all fine and dandy if God commanded you to fast. Just to take on a fast because you want to be closer to God and punish yourself is not necessarily noble. It's not necessarily honorable, because you have to have this rapturous love, but still you have to be in a physical body and take care of your physical body. So what the 2 sons of Aaron, while their motivation was correct, their actions were incorrect. They died. And one has to realize when you die, you no longer can do mitzvahs. When you die, you can no longer keep kosher. It's done. When you die, you can no longer put on tefillin, wear tzitzit, light the Shabbos candles. You can't. It's done. So the reason why in Judaism we push for life and we don't pull plugs unnecessarily, um, and we don't hold back, nutrition and water in most cases, is because as long as you're alive, your soul's in a physical body. And as long as it's in a physical body, it's doing what it needs to do, even at half throttle. So for Aaron's sons to willingly give up their life was considered wrong, albeit for the right reason. So here's the practical. We need ratzui. We need to connect with God as much as we can. But we also need shuv. We also need to return to our bodies and take care of ourselves. So Maimonides is very clear. You need sleep. Without sleep, he says, it's a sin. So you can't be up all night studying. You need sleep. Maimonides says you need to eat. Halacha, code of Jewish law. Right? You can't just say, okay, I'm not going to eat. I'm fasting. Right? No, you need to eat. You need to sleep. You need to work. You need to exercise. You need to do these things for your body. And at the same time, you need to try and get as close to God as you can. Aaron was silent. Aaron didn't complain. A very hard thing to do. Right? Many of us, myself included, when we go through struggles, we turn to God and we say, why? Why me? Why this? Why that? Aaron didn't do any of that. And it's such a normal thing to do. But Aaron, vayidom, right? He doesn't mean he didn't cry. Doesn't mean he didn't feel pain, but he didn't challenge. And that's an extremely difficult thing to do. I know I'm not at that level. And Moshe turned to two sons of Aaron. Moshe turned to the two relatives of Aaron, to his cousins. Aaron's cousins said, remove the bodies, bury them, and take them out of the holies of holies. Go in there, take them out, and bury them, because you got to be buried. As in Judaism, we strive to bury as quickly as we can. We do not have prolonged wakes, etc. And then he turned to Aaron and the two sons, the remaining two sons, and he said, do not leave your hair uncut. A Kohen had to have short hair when you work in the Holy Temple. A mourner is not allowed to cut your hair, as we know. You're not allowed to cut your hair when you lose a loved one. Of the 7 relatives, father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, spouse. He says, no, but that doesn't apply to you. You have to cut your hair. You're not allowed to cut your clothes. Everybody else does that. We cut our clothes, right? And if you do, that's punishable by death. You are a special case. You have to not mourn. Today's a day of joy. And even though you have mixed emotions, you have to act as if. This whole concept, by the way, of act as if is wild. That you have to have its behavior modification. It's brought down in the Holy Book of Tanya. That's what we have to do. We have to act as if. We don't feel like praying, going to shul. Act as if. Act as if you do feel like it. We don't feel like giving charity. We don't feel like doing this mitzvah or that mitzvah. You know what? Says Tanya, act as if. It's not about your feelings, bud, even though it is, but the only way to change is by behavior modification and to get through it, push through it. Once again, a difficult task, but doable, possible. So the Aaron and the 2 remaining brothers had to act as if. whether you're in the mood or not. You got to continue, and they did. Then God spoke to Aaron and Aaron alone. Usually, God spoke to Moses and Aaron, or Moses, and then Moses told Aaron what God said. This is one of the only times where God spoke to Aaron, and it was a reward that he didn't yell at God or scream at God. By Yidam, he just shut up. And God told him, Aaron, when you are working in the holy temple, you are not allowed to be drunk. You and your children. Any Kohen that works in the holy temple are not allowed to drink any wine or any alcohol that will cause inebriation. Because if you do, you will die. And in order Torah, God continues, in order to distinguish between the sacred and the profane, between the contaminated and the pure, and to teach the children of Israel everything that God wants. So for a Kohen to be in the holy temple drunk is punishable by death. And why did God give him that command? Is the commentaries say that the two sons of Aaron were drunk. They knew what they were going to do could end up with death. They didn't want to, says the Kabbalist. They didn't even want to be alive. They wanted to be close to God, and they felt their body was completely limiting, inhibiting. So they drank. They didn't have proper clothing. They weren't married. They didn't have kids. All this is a biblical command. If you're going to go to the holies of holies, you have to be married. You have to have children, and you have to have proper clothing, and you can't be drunk. They went in because they wanted death. And it's a mistake. Once again, you got to be, the only way you can do mitzvahs is in a physical body. From the verse on chapter 10, verse 11, where it says, and to teach the children of Israel all the decrees, from here we learn that a rabbi, if he's teaching, a rabbi who's sitting on a rabbinical court of law is not allowed to be drunk either. A rabbi that's officiating at a wedding or at a funeral, a divorce, whatever it may be, is not allowed to be drunk or high. Because you may not be punishable by death, like at Aaron, but you're not allowed to. Biblically, you're not allowed to. So when I officiate, for example, at a wedding, I may take a drink after the chuppah when my job is done, but not before. Moses, the Torah continues, Moses told Aaron and his sons that offer up the sacrifices as usual. And today is a special day. Today is these sacrifices of inauguration. Today is it's a Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month of Nisan. Offer up sacrifices of usual. And then Moshe inquired whether they offered up this sacrifice and that sacrifice. He actually got upset at Aaron because Aaron did one sacrifice. Aaron did not offer up as usual. It was the one that was going to be done continuously. And there were three sacrifices offered that day. There was the inauguration, the first one from the head of the tribe, Aaron's one, and the Rosh Chodesh one, the new moon one. Aaron did not offer up the new moon one because he, as a mourner, he was not allowed to. And he said, the new moon one I can do next month. But these two are only one-time event. I have to do it. Moshe argued with him. He said, how do you not offer up the new moon one? Aaron said, because I can do it next month. And Moshe said, you're right. Now, that's a sign of a true leader. Moshe told Aaron off. Aaron responded. Moshe thought about it and apologized. He apologized. And he took back. He took back his reprimand of Aaron. He took back. He said, "You're right. You're right." He wasn't too arrogant to be able to say, "You're no. It's got to be as I say. It's got to be as I say. You have to listen to me." No, he listened, and he took a step back. And it's also a sign of humility. And they say Moshe was extremely humble. It was a sign of humility that that Moshe was able to be able to step back and say, I am not, all knowing. I am fallible, and I stand to be corrected at times. Torah reading continues. At that time, Moshe and Aaron said to the Jewish people, taught them the laws of kosher. And it's interesting. It says zos hachaya. This is the animal you're allowed to eat. Rashi says that they had samples of animals. In other words, they spoke to the Jewish people, and they had the cow, the pig, the camel, the this, the that, and the other with them. And they told them as follows: any animal that chews its cud, regurgitates its food, and has split hooves, completely split, that is an animal you're allowed to eat. If it has neither, you're not allowed to eat it. If it has one or the other, you're not allowed to eat it. It has to have both signs. And then the Torah says there are 4 animals that have only one of the signs. And the Torah says, this is the camel, this is the pig, this is the rock badger, this is the hyrax. 4 animals. Now, what's interesting to note is we've never found the 5th animal. So this command was given 3,350 years ago. And it was given in the desert in a certain part of the land, a certain geographical spot on earth, right? In the desert, essentially, in between Israel and Egypt. Seems to be, I think, a little bit to the east of Israel, lower Jordan Valley, seemingly. Well, it's not 100% sure. But how would they know that there's no 5th animal that has one of the signs? Because if we found in the Congo a 5th animal, it would actually remove from the validity of the Torah. Well, if the Torah was given by God, right? What happens if there's a 5th animal? That proves that Torah wasn't given by God. So it's actually reverse psychology. The Torah must have been given by God, because no man could say there are 4 animals that only have one of the signs. Would you say that? I wouldn't commit to that. I don't know what's going on in the Amazon, in the Congo, in the Mojave Desert, even, let alone the Arabian Desert. But Moshe was able to, because this was a talk from God. This was came straight from God. And the Torah. So out of these 4 animals, one of them is the pig. Now, the reason why the pig, Jews say, "Oh, we don't eat pork. Many Jews don't eat pork," and that seems to be the symbolism of non-kosher pork, right? And the reason given is because out of the 4 animals that only have one of the signs, the other 3, they do not have split hooves. The camel does not have split hoof. It has a hoof, but not split. But it regurgitates. So does the rock badger. So does the hyrax. The pig looks kosher, but it's not. The pig has split hooves. So outwardly it looks kosher, but inwardly it doesn't chew its cud. And that's detestable. That's why the pig is the paradigm of non-kosher, because it looks the part, but it ain't the part. And that's the only animal. The Torah tells us that fish have to have both fins and scales. It cannot just have one. And it's interesting, if it has, here's a general thing you should know, is if it has scales, it automatically has fins. If you just see scales for a sec, you should know it has a fin. Or it had a fin, maybe it was bitten off. But if it has scales, it has fins. If it has fins, it doesn't necessarily have scales. So there are hundreds of fish that have fins and scales. And and we can buy fish from any supermarket. Meat is a different story, but fish, any supermarket, as long as it has skin on it on one side that shows that it has scales, it's a kosher fish. You don't have to worry about the fins. So you can go into ShopRite in in Ronkonkoma and Hapag, all these names. If you're not a Long Islander, you're wondering where they are, and you can pick out a fish and say, please, I want a piece of this. I'll take that, as long as it has the skin. If it doesn't have the skin, it could be a different fish. It's not kosher. The only one that you can buy without skin is salmon. It's such a unique color that you can even buy it without. But here's the problem: when they cut it, it just as I'm going off on a tangent. If you say, please, I'll have that piece of haddock, their knife may have touched lobster, their knife may have touched shark, it may have touched swordfish. So therefore, when you take it home, you have to, where it was cut, you have to take a little sliver and throw it out. Or give them your own knife. And then you're fine. And you wash it well, and you're good to go. So according to the Alter Rebbe, the Shulchan Aruch Harav, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, salmon does not need skin. You still have to be careful if they cut it with a non-kosher knife that wasn't cleaned well. Birds, they continue. Is the Torah tells us that birds, the Torah gives the names of birds of what you're not allowed to eat, and all the others you are allowed to eat. Now the Torah gives these names in Hebrew. We assume we know what they are: the pelican, the hawk, the vulture, the eagle, the stork, the etc. The owl, the ostrich. All these are not kosher. But with birds, it's a little tricky because there's no sign. So what we do today, in today's day, and it's been going on for hundreds of years, we do not eat birds that our parents did not eat. So chickens, our parents ate, we eat chickens, and our children will eat chickens if they're not vegetarians. We eat turkey, we eat duck, we eat goose, right? But to be honest, I don't know about pheasant. I just don't know. So we only eat what our parents ate. And if our parents did not eat it, our grandparents did not eat it, we have no tradition, we do not eat it. We cut it out. Even though you may have heard that somebody ate it 1,000 years ago, if it's not in our tradition, we don't eat it. There are those who don't eat turkey, but that's because there is a will from the Shalah. He's called the Shalah because he wrote a book. Shalah, I would say Horowitz is his last name. He's buried near the Rambam. I'm related to him, and he wrote in his will that while turkey's kosher, he doesn't want his kids, his sons. He didn't say his daughters. He doesn't want his sons eating turkey because he saw turkey kill another turkey or kill a child. I don't remember. And therefore, there are many people with the last name Horowitz or Klein that do not eat turkey. If you're Horowitz and you're a Levi, chances are you come from the Shalah and you do not eat turkey. If it's from your mother's side, which is what my connection is, it's my father's mother, so I could eat turkey. Technically, I could eat turkey. It was only for the sons, but it's still kosher turkey. So that's with birds. Then the Torah says you cannot eat creepy crawlies. You cannot eat any other animals that have pads. A lion, a leopard, which they don't have split hooves, etc. No bugs, no beetles, no mosquitoes, no flies, nothing like that. No creepy crawlies, it says in the Torah. Now, because of these things where you can't eat, You cannot eat bugs. Therefore, before we eat leafy vegetables, or before we eat anything that grows, we have to check it for bugs. So an apple, we don't really have to check. It's bug free. I mean, if you see a hole in it, maybe you don't even buy it from the store but if it had a bug and the bug's not there, the caterpillar, the worm is not there, you can eat it. Oranges, the real tricky ones is the leafy vegetables. Leafy vegetables have to be inspected. You cannot just take some spinach and eat it. You have to check it. You cannot take lettuce and eat it. Now, generally, iceberg is pretty clear. Romaine it has to be, and iceberg has to be checked, but iceberg is very few and far between. But romaine, I can't tell you how many bugs I've found in romaine lettuce. And by the way, if it's too buggy, I throw it out because I feel it's impossible to clean. So lettuce, spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, gotta check it. What you do practically is I put it in a bowl of water. I put salt in the water, so it's salt water. I submerge the leaves in the broccoli or the cauliflower, and I let it sit for a while, 10 hours, 12 hours. And the idea is that the salt water will kill the bugs. Once the bugs are killed, they're not attached to the florets, and they will rise to the surface. Excuse me. Once you let it sit, and some people don't let it sit, some people just wash it very carefully. Then they don't let it sit for 12 hours or 10 hours or a few hours. They just wash it and they hold it up to the light. Once they do that, and once you've cleaned it, you could thank you. Once you've washed it and checked it to the light, if there's no light, you hold it up to the if there's no natural light, hold it up to the light. I know in restaurants, when they check, they have a light box, so it's very bright. They put it on. It's a big deal because you eat a bug, it's a big deal. You're not allowed to, and therefore you have to check. There are some people, present company not included, who do not eat strawberries because they fear that the little dots in the strawberries are not really dots, but bugs. So broccoli, cauliflower, and any leafy vegetables. Even scallions, what I do is I cut the scallion down the middle, the green part, and I look and I wash it, and it's fine. I personally have never found bugs in scallions, but I have other people who told me they have. But leafy vegetables definitely is the Achilles heel here. So we have to be careful. Then the Torah gives us some tameh and tahor, purity and impurity, which we won't get into now. The last part of the Torah portion is where the Torah tells us it's very important to know. It's very important, not just for the rabbi. It's very important for everybody to know what's kosher, what's not kosher, what can be eaten, what can't be eaten, what's buggy, what's not buggy. That these things is for everybody to know the difference. So to know and you don't make a mistake. So willful blindness is not an excuse. It's considered willful blindness. A person has to study, and maybe one day we'll actually have a course on it, how to check bugs. It's probably not a bad idea, but until then, you can learn the lessons oneself. Torah portion ends. We will reconvene next week, please God. May you have a great and awesome and inspiring week.